webcast will be available for viewing later today on the SANS registration page. And with that, I'd like to hand the webcast over to Xavier.
Thank you, Dan. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I don't know exactly where you are located tonight. When I say tonight, because it's already 9 p.m. 30 here in Belgium, where I'm located. This presentation, during this presentation, I will explain you the result that I found while hunting for malicious code on the internet. I hope you will enjoy the presentation. It's not too technical, but you will have a lot of slides containing some not very obfuscated code, but some kind of different techniques. So I hope you will enjoy it. Let's start with a quick introduction about myself. I'm a cybersecurity freelance. I'm a consultant based in Belgium. My name is Xavier Mertens. I'm a French-speaking guy, and you can find me on many social networks like XMe. You can see my avatar, which is the Belgian blowfish. I'm always using the same, so if you see this kind of picture, you are sure that it's myself. So I'm security freelance doing a lot of security projects for my customers. I'm more involved in blue team activities because I like to hunt for the bad guys. And besides my day job, I have also a lot of night activities. I'm a blogger. Very important, of course, I'm a SANS Internet Storm Center handler for a few years, and I consider myself as a hacker, a geek, because I like to understand how technical stuff are working, computers, gadgets, or electronic devices. You have some URLs if you want to reach me later. And also very important, by the way, I'm the co-organizer of BruCon, one of the, I could say the best security conference in Belgium. So the Internet Storm Center, I need to mention this on the slide because what I will present to you this evening is mainly based on my research for the ISC. So I'm already involved for a few years in the team as a handler. I like this basically. I like to help other people. I like to try to share what I found. And when I say to share what I found, I'm a hunter, basically. I like hunting. And it means that I spend a lot of time. I have a lot of tools running 24 hours a day, Yara holes, scripts running here and there to grab interesting stuff. Well, I hope to be interesting stuff. And indeed, from time to time, I find nice scripts, nice samples of malware. And if you check on the IC website, at the moment, most of the diaries that I post are diaries related to malware analysis, reversing, and explaining how that works. And that's I will do today for some of them, which are very specific because they compile themselves locally on the infected computer. A few words about the malware landscape. Yeah, basically, the graphic that I show you on these slides is a classic one. So the idea just to prove you, but I'm pretty sure that all of you already know that the malware landscape is evolving all the time, and we have more and more attacks, more and more samples, especially these days with the COVID-19 pandemic. It's really a goldmine for the attackers because today most of the campaigns that I found are related to COVID-19. So people try to lure the victims because they ask them to open documents containing normally sensitive information about the coronavirus, or they try to give you some tips how to protect yourself to not be infected, blah, blah, blah. So it's really a mess. So the key point of on this graph is that it's almost impossible to find unique samples because when a campaign it started today, the malware are almost compiled. It's a single sample for every different kind of victims. So the number keeps growing, and it's almost impossible today to detect and to be sure to find a sample just based on the hash, because so SHA-256, SHA-1, MD5, and so on, because it's changing all the time. And you can have in a company, for example, which is targeted, you can have 5 victims in a phishing campaign, and probably the 5 victims will get 5 different samples. They will do the same, the behavior will be the same, but the sample by itself will be different because it's prepared per victim just to defeat the AVs, to defeat all the classic security controls that we can have in organizations. Just to give you a practical example, this screenshot is coming from my MSB instance. So MSB is a platform to share IOCs, to share information about attackers, about campaigns. And the screenshot you see on the title, it's the daily incremental cryptolimus emotet IOCs payloads. And you see that it was just a daily incremental. So it's just an event created for the daily samples found regarding this campaign, and you see that you have more than 1,000 IOCs. So basically, in this event, you have more than 1,000 hashes, different hashes, so different samples, but all of them belonging to the same campaign. Regarding the way attackers tried to install and to deploy to infect computers, we have 2 different approaches. The first one, you can see this on, for example, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the COVID-19 campaigns is this kind of approach. You have a lot of emails sent to millions of people. And the attacker, by sending so many emails, so many links, the attacker hopes that at least a few of them will click on the link, will open the attachment, and will be infected. So the success ratio is very low in this case. But on the other side, it doesn't cost a lot of money, because the attacker sending millions of emails today is just cost almost nothing. On the other side, you can have dedicated malware. So those malwares, they are developed to target a very specific victim. It can be 1 people, can be 1 company, can be a group of people. And in this case, the success ratio must be high. Why I say must be high? Because the time used by the attacker to prepare everything has a cost. It used a lot of time to write the malware, to prepare the attack, to prepare the phishing email, to be sure that the victim will be lured and will click on the link. So the success ratio must be high. That's the difference between the 2 approaches. But those 2 approaches, in most of the time, they have the same infection path. So it starts with a phishing or some kind of social engineering. Think again about the COVID-19 pandemic, so a very huge topic. Phishing, social engineering based on 2 very important protocols, always the same, SMTP, HTTP. Why? Because those protocols are used in every organization and will continue to be used for a very long time. Some companies, some organizations started to try to think about reducing the usage of email, to try to avoid sending emails between customers, partners, suppliers, and so on. But it's very, very, very difficult to achieve this today. So emails remain one of the key infection vectors. When you receive the mail, a mail, or you get an attachment, you get a link, that's the first stage. The challenge in this case is to bypass the classic perimeter controls. Your antivirus, anti-spam, probably a sandbox system, probably firewall, next generation firewall, inspecting up to layer 7. That's the goal of the first stage, bypass basic controls. Then the first stage will try to download the second stage, which will be exactly the malware, the sample, which will infect the computer. And in this case, the challenge is to be successful successfully dropped onto the victim computer and executed. And tonight in this presentation, I will show you that a very specific way to achieve this. So instead of downloading the second stage from another URL, from simply extracting the payload from a base64 from a document, it will just compile the code live on the victim's computer and tries to execute it. And finally, the goal after the second stage is just to perform the malicious activities, so to abuse the victim computer, to do some exfiltration, to install a RAT, remote access tool, to pivot internally on the network, and so on and so on and so on. So fighting malware, I like this picture. It's just playing like a cat and mouse game. Why? Because when we found a campaign and we found new techniques used by attackers, the attackers, what they will do, they will just try to find another way to make the life of the secure analyst, the malware reverser, more difficult, or they will try to find new techniques to bypass the automated tools like sandboxes. It's not because you have a sandbox today. There are almost today, most of the security vendors, they provide sandboxes to analyze in a live environment the malware. Today, it's still, I will not say easy, but it's still possible to bypass the sandboxes. So it's really a cat and mouse game. We have to always to change the techniques to improve them. And also for the malware analyst, it's also challenging because obfuscation techniques are changing. They change the way they execute code. Let's think about the evolution of Excel macros. So we see, we already posted on the Internet Storm Center website for a few weeks some diaries regarding the Excel 4 macro. Excel normally use VBA macros, so you can find OLA objects containing macros written in VBA. But we see that for a few weeks, a few months, the attackers, they are just reverting back to a previous version of the macro malware, so the version 4 of those macros, because basically they were less interesting, so that there was no interest in checking those files. Today, so they switch back to this technique and they try to infect computers using the Excel 4 macros. Let's dive now into the topic of today. The Microsoft, so basically what I will explain today is just running on Microsoft systems. Because Microsoft is a wonderful toolbox. Microsoft operating systems can be Windows 7, Windows 10, and almost all of them. They are always installed with a full set of interesting tools. And those tools, they have specific features that can be used. So that's the goal of the feature, of course. So they are used for very specific usage, but if they can be used, they can be abused. The first example in the screenshot that you see on my screen, you see a simple notepad. And if you open a document in Notepad, when you have the dialog box to select a file, instead of installing a file, selecting a file, you can just type a URL. And you see that I just typed https://blog.toolshell.be/robots.txt, which is my home blog. And if you open this, you will see in your notepad that it will fetch the contents of the robots.txt. So it will perform an HTTP request to my website and it will display the contents. You can do the same to save the file. So if you do save as and you specify a URL, you can also save the content on the website. Of course, the website must be configured to allow writing files and so on. But it's a feature that is present in almost every Windows software because it's part of the API and it's part of the dialog box. It's just a feature. There are also plenty of tools that are installed and that can be used in a different way. The first command that you see, ping -n 10.127.0.001, basically it's just a ping command. But in many scripts, the malware writers, they have to wait for some actions. So just to be sure that the file is completely downloaded, the file is in the computer is infected, or there are some stuff in place, they have to wait. So when you wait in the script, you can just do a sleep. You have the command sleep 10 and you will sleep 10 seconds. But this is way too readable. So if you see in a script read sleep 10, you know immediately that you have to wait, the script is waiting for something. If you do ping -n 10 to the loopback interface, basically what you will do, using this command, you will sleep and you will wait 10 seconds, because the ping command by default send one ICAP echo request every second. So it's a nice way to use a sleep function based on ping. The second example, bitsadmin, is a tool which is normally used to perform file transfer, mainly to download updates. So Microsoft, when they do automatic updates, they transfer files and they use bitsadmin.exe because this command is very complex and very powerful. If you do bitsadmin.exe/help, you will get, I don't remember how many parameters, but pages of parameters, because you can limit the bandwidth, you can prioritize the traffic and so on. But this command can just be used to download a file and then execute it. So the command that you see on the screen, it will just execute a job, which is called my job in this case. And the job will be to transfer at a very high priority the binary file located on foobar.com. It will save it in appdata directory as malware.exe, and then it will just execute the malware. So you don't need a browser, you don't need a specific tool, you can just call bitsadmin.exe. And the big advantage of this command is installed on every Windows operating system. Another one, certutil.exe. This command by default is a utility, a tool to manage certificates. But you can also do very simple operations like decoding base64 files. So in this example, in b64.txt, I have a malicious executable, a P file, and I can just decode it and create output.exe, which will be my malicious file. Even better, certutil, like bitsadmin, can also grab files from the internet. So this is the same command as bitsutil, but you just do the -ul cache command, argument, sorry, which is the -split. You specify the URL, it will create bat.exe, and you execute bat.exe. Those tools are present in every Microsoft operating system. Now, one step further, we will really see the topic of today, the wonderful .NET framework. Microsoft provides a network to developers to help them to easily develop applications. .NET is very nice because you can deploy on multiple platforms. You can develop them for the desktop operating system, for mobile devices, IoTs, and it's very popular. It's so popular that today it is installed on almost every operating system from Microsoft. Because when you install the framework being very popular, when you will have to install applications, if you don't have the framework, you will face the dialog box that you see on the screen. This application requires one of the following version of .NET, version blah, 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 and so on. Do you want to install it? So easy. You click yes, it will grab the files, launch the installer, and you will have Microsoft.NET installed on your computer. Easy as click and run. I'm not a developer, but writing .NET application is very easy. So the framework has a lot of tools. It's also a very nice toolbox. I just put a simple piece of code, so you can see it's quite convenient to write, very easy to use as a developer. So this framework is really, really popular among the developers. In this framework, the framework comes with plenty of tools, and I will just present you 3 tools that we will use in the presentation today. The first one is called gsc.exe. As you can see on the second line of the screenshot, JScript compiler version, blah, blah, blah. So the goal of GSC is just to compile JScript script, so to generate a PE file, a binary from your source code. The second one is csc.exe, which is the Visual C compiler. So it's like your GCC on a Unix system. You can just compile your code and produce a PE file. The third one is msbuild.exe, which is the build engine. It's you will understand how it works in a few minutes. It's a little bit like I like to compare it to the make command on the Unix system, because it's a tool which can receive an XML file, and based on the XML file, it will just generate an application. It will collect all the requirements. It will build the application and also execute the application so the resulting PE file by itself. So 3 tools that are very interesting. When I explain this to a customer, the first message that I received is, yeah, but we are not developers. I'm not a developer, so it means that I don't need those tools. I don't have the tools installed on my computer. You are wrong. Because if you install the basic .NET framework to be able to run application that requires the framework, you will have by default all those commands. They will be installed. Just to give you an example, I tested this on a very secure network. So one of my customers has to operate a very secure network. So all the workstations are controlled. All the workstations are based on the gold image. You cannot install anything. They are very strict about what's running on the workstation and so on. And guess what? .NET was, of course, installed because it was required by some other application, and all the tools that I just presented were present on the file system and were available to all users. So before showing some example, I have to talk a little bit about the obfuscation. All the examples that I will show you in the following slides have been deobfuscated because, of course, not only the scripts are doing malicious activities, but to make the life of the malware analyst even more difficult, all of them implement a lot of obfuscation techniques. That some of them are very simple, some of them are very, between quotes, funny, some of them are very, very strong and powerful. That's not the goal of the presentation today. So keep in mind that all the examples have been deobfuscated to help you to better understand the content of the script. Let's go for a first example based on JScript. One of the key elements for the Microsoft.NET framework, you can have multiple versions of the same framework installed on your computer. For example, on one of my VM that I'm running today for my day-to-day job, I have 4 different Microsoft.NET framework installed. Why? Just because the framework are just upgraded, like any software, and the version depends on the version. The version that you need depends on the version used by the developer. So if a developer uses a specific version, you will get the pop-up dialog box, and it will require you to install the correct version of the framework. That's why you can have multiple versions, and all of them are located in C, Windows, Microsoft.NET framework, and then you have one directory per version. So the goal of this script is just to find if a jsc.exe command is present on the system. Trust me, it is in 99% of the cases. And to do this, there is just a basic function called find JSC. And you see that it just creates, so it's a first JScript. And so it creates an ActiveX object. So using the file system object, we have the default path. It verifies if first the main directory exists. And if it exists, it will just enumerate all the different versions found in all the different subdirectories present in the main directory. And if it found something called gsc.exe, it will just return the path of the command. Simple. Then we have another ActiveX object also regarding the file system. And in this case, you see that we have different variables. First, we have the JavaScript gs_f, which is called in this case lzgma.js. And we have the same name .exe to generate the binary file. We have also a parameter which means which platform we have to compile, for which platform we have to compile the executable, because you can select if it's a 32-bit, 64 bits. And finally, we have the object shell.run, which will just concatenate and prepare the big string, and it will execute the command that you see below. So in this version, in this case, we will use the version 4.0.30.319. It will generate the .exe for x64 platform. It will be a Win executable, and the source code will be in the temp directory in the file lzgma.js. So the question is, why is coming this? What's the content of this file? The content was very simple. It was another function. You have the function called shellcode exec. And if you have already some experience with malware reversing and how bad things may occur, basically this code is very simple. First, you see that the code is located in the variable shellcode str. You see that it's starting with tvpbul, blah, 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 and so on. I deleted everything because, of course, this string contains the base64 encoding of our malicious payload. It's a very, very big string, so I just put the first characters. By experience, when you see a base64 string starting with tvpbul, you know immediately that it's a PE file. It's always citing like this. So the goal is to, you see that the next line, we convert this big string from base64, and then we use virtualalloc to allocate some memory. The most important parameter in this case is the page execute read write. So it means that we will allocate some memory which will contain executable code. And then we will just copy the shell code that we decoded on this location. We generate the new thread, we create the thread, and we just execute the malicious code. So simple. It's very easy script. I don't remember exactly what was the goal of the shell code. Probably the shell code was to download again another stage, a third stage, or to do some malicious activities, but that it's not the goal of tonight. So the goal is just to explain you how GSC can be used to compile code and execute it on the system. The second example is based on the csc.exe, so that's the C compiler. And in this case, I found the information in a macro, in a VB macro, which was included in a malicious Word document. So you can recognize that you have, oops, disable identity. Oh, sorry for this. You found back the classic auto open function name, so it means that the macro will be executed automatically when the document is open. And in this case, where is located the malicious code, so the code that will be compiled, it's in the document itself. You can see the line main data equals active document.content.text. So what does it mean in VBA, sorry? By using this in a Word document, we will just fetch the complete text of the document, which usually is written in the document white on white. So it means that when you open the document, you see just a white page because the code is not readable, but the code is really present on the document. So this code is read, then you generate, we create a file, and we simply dump the content of the document into a flat file on the disk. Then we have the same kind of behavior like the first example. We have the path to the CSC command. So that's what will be executed. We execute the command. So the installer.cs is contains what we dumped from the Word document. And then we create a WScript shell, so a new object, and the installer.exe is just executed. It's the freshly compiled binary based on that's the result of the csc.exe command execution. And then we have some other stuff. So we wait 2 seconds, we wait a few seconds, and so on and so on. So easy. The document is just opened. We read the content of the document. We dump it on a disk. It contains C code. The code is compiled by the auto-open macro and just executed. The next example is MSBuild. As I said a few minutes ago, so MSBuild, I like to compare it as the make Unix command. So if you are not familiar with Unix, make is a command that takes a big file as parameter, the well-known make file, and this make file contains all the details about all the parameters, all the rules to build the application, the tool that you would like to compile. MSBuild does the same. It requires a project file, which is in this case on Windows an XML file, and it contains all the compilation details. So again, while hunting, I found interesting stuff. And first, this is the result of a MSBuild command. So if you use MSBuild in a DOS box, you just call MSBuild and you pass the XML file. You will see plenty of information. So you will see what it is doing. So if you are familiar with the PE file, you will recognize the section .text, rdata, data, pdata, and so on. You see also all the DLLs that are required to build the malicious code. And in this case, well, it was a very specific example, but the goal of this MSBuild XML file was to generate a Mimikatz, a local Mimikatz file and execute it. That's how it works. So when you see this, you can imagine that you can, of course, automate everything using a macro. Again, same kind of example. In this case, the original file was not a Microsoft Word, but was a Microsoft Excel sheet. And a classic way to hide data in an Excel sheet is just to split the malicious code in multiple cells and to fill cells, but way below in the file. So you see that it's starting from line 500 to line 514. And same as the Word document, to write the information white on white to make it readable. So the goal of this macro is just to process the different cells. So it's always from the column A, so from 500 to 514, to concatenate them. You see that you have full equals text plus text 1 plus text 2 plus text 3 and so on and so on and so on. Of course, the content of this information is again base64 encoded. So we just decode it. We can write the data in a file. And this is the result. This is the XML file that was generated by the macro. And then when you do this, you have another macro in the Excel sheet, and the macro does again the same behavior. So we have first the creation of the text file. We dump on the file what we decoded from the different cells previously, and then we create a new object WScript.shell, and we call MSBuild with the XML file, which is in this case hidden as a task kb blah blah blah.log, and we execute the application. Very simple. So you see that we have 3 examples. It's always the same behavior, but instead of dropping a malicious PE file by visiting a URL, dropping the PE file from a Dropbox, from a Google document, from a share, from a compromised WordPress CMS. The idea in this case is always the same. We just extract source code from the malicious document, so they try to reduce as much as possible the network traffic, because the network traffic generated by a malware is one of the key points. It's very easy to detect malicious traffic generated on the network. So if you can tap on your network devices, if you can sniff, if you have a good IDS, you can write IDS rules, YAROs, and so on, you will spot a lot of interesting stuff. In this case, the goal of the attackers is always to try to work in a very stealthy way and to avoid a lot of communication with the outside world. So they just drop the payload on the file and they use the commands that are present on almost every computer to generate the malicious executable. I had it, it's just brand new. It's not the first time that I'm presenting this research, but this is a brand new example, very fresh. I found this sample this morning, so I spent the afternoon to just update my slide, and I hope that you will find it interesting, because again, it's not really, they use msbuild.exe in this case, but in the other way, in another way, instead of calling msbuild.exe with an XML file to generate a malicious code, they just use msbuild.exe to inject malicious code, and msbuild will become the malware itself. So let's have a look at the attack. It was a very nice one. It started like this. This is the first step. So I received, I received via an alert. It matches one of my YARA rule. This is this kind of document. So basically, when you read this, it's very simple to understand. It's just simple URL encoding. So you can replace all the %exa characters by something, by the real ASCII character. And when you decode it, this is what you get. So it's a VB script. The first thing is that creates a registry key, which is in HKCU software, Microsoft Windows current version run. They call it bin. So you know that it's a very nice way to implement some persistence. So it means that every time the computer will reboot, it will execute this registry key, which will be a simple PowerShell. I like the name Suck My Ass. Sorry for the name, but that's the name of the second entry, the second key they created. Then they create another registry in HKCU software, that's in this case Suck My Ass, which contain a piece of PowerShell code. In this case, you can see that there are two pastebin URLs. So every time the computer will boot, once it has been infected, it will fetch two pasties from pastebin, and it will then use an injection technique. I will not go deeper because it's not the goal of today, but they use a specific injection technique to inject the malicious code into msbuild.exe, and msbuild.exe will behave in a malicious way on the system, which is nice because normally msbuild.exe is a classic tool. As I explained to you, it's present on every computer. It's present. It's a well-known name by developers. So most people, if they see a process msbuild.exe, they will not be afraid of it because it looks completely legit. So the first paste is just a DLL that will be injected in the PowerShell script. So you can see this on the line: system, reflection, assembly, load, decompress byte array. And the DLL will provide a technique for injecting the malicious code into msbuild, and via the givara freedom. So this new method is provided by the injected DLL into the PowerShell. Let's have a look at the first pastebin. That's the DLL. So if you download this from pastebin, you can. That's the real URL. So you can have a look. You will get a bunch of code. You need to decoded because it's basic-4 encoded, and it's also compressed. And when you have this, that's the code that you get. And then you get another bunch of code. At the end of the slide, you see bank 1F, bank 8B, bank 08, and so on and so on. What I like also is the way they try to hide the PowerShell command IAX. So you see $T0 equals dex, and then they replace D by I, which means that T0 is AAX, which is a command to execute some PowerShell commands into PowerShell. And then they assign T0 as G, so G is now the command IX. You see at the last line of the slide, pipe G. So it means that everything which is in the byte, CLI, blah, 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 and so on, will be basically processed by PowerShell through the IX command, which is very nice. So this DLL is injected into the PowerShell script. I will go back a few seconds to the previous slide, and they will provide the new method, Givara freedom. The next pasty has a different format, you can see. So it's like this. So you have a lot of hashtags, 4D, 5A, and so on. Again, in this case, so it's just an hexadecimal representation of malicious code, and you see the classic 4D 5A, which is MZ. So it means that it's a P file. In this case, it's an executable. And this executable is injected into the msbuild.exe. So the first step, we have a DLL loaded into PowerShell via this command, the system reflection assembly load, blah, blah, blah. And then we have the second payload from the second pasty, which is injected into msbuild.exe using the givara.freedom method. And the result of this, basically, when you execute the code, so this is from my sandbox, you see that you have the process name msbuild. So you see the PowerShell start different threads. It start msbuild, do the injection, and at a certain point, we have no msbuild.exe, which generate a lot of network connectivity. And the IP address 192.254.77.121 on port 5200, basically it's sat101chap2.duckdns.org, that's the C2, and the malware injected into msbuild.exe is just a remote access tool, warzone.rat. It was a very nice example that I found this afternoon. So now, based on the different examples that I explained, what are the benefits for the attacker? So the first one, as I remember, the tools are available. The Microsoft Windows operating system is a wonderful toolbox. There are plenty of tools available for the attacker that can be abused. They can be used in a specific way. The tools are also signed by Microsoft. GSC, CSC, msbuild.exe, that they are official tools from Microsoft. So it means that if you use some secret controls like AppLocker, and you say in your AppLocker policy, do not execute only tools that are signed by Microsoft, they will be executed because they are signed by Microsoft. They reside in a trusted location, which is WinDir. They are not located in a temp directory, in app data, and so on. So also, based on your policies, they will be executed most of the case because they are trusted. Also, if you have very specific environment, the P file, so the malicious code, which will be compiled, with local settings, which is nice, because when you compile a malware, I'm sitting here like an attacker, so the benefit for the attacker. When you compile, if your system is a system in French, in Italian, is a system in a foreign language, if you have very specific configuration, the PE will be generated, the compilation will occur with your local settings. So you increase the chances that the malware will not be detected and will run smoothly. And also, finally, as I explained, you will generate less network flows. So instead of trying to grab here and there a lot of P files and so on, We have everything provided by the first stage in the malicious document, in the base64 encoded format, and we don't generate some suspicious network activities. I'm a blue guy. I'm a blue team. I like to based on what you saw until now. So I like to hunt. I like to protect my customers. So I'm a blue team guy. So I have to provide you some tips how to protect against this. The goal is to detect the creation of suspicious processes. And my key point here, my key advice could be to use Sysmon. Sysmon is a very, very nice tool developed by Microsoft. It's part of the Sys internals tools. It's very popular. More and more organizations are using it. And basically, for those who don't know Sysmon right now, the goal is to detect suspicious activities or suspicious behavior based on very powerful rules. Those rules, you have to write them. It could be complex if you start from zero, but you can find on the internet very, very nice sources where people share good Sysmon rules. This is an example. This is not a native Sysmon rules. This is an example written to be really easy to understand. The goal in this case is simply to detect. The goal is to detect when a specific process has been executed from a parent process which is not the normal one. Think about msbuild.exe, jsc.exe. If you are a developer, you could execute this command from a command line, for example. So you are just developing, you need to generate your P file, you will execute your msbuild from the command line. But the goal of this rule is just to notify you when gsc.exe, msbuild.exe, or csc.exe are executed from an abnormal parent image. You see the different images that I provided: WinWord.exe, Excel, PowerPoint, MS Publisher, Visio, Outlook is also a very nice candidate, PowerShell.exe, and so on. PowerShell.exe could be dangerous because if you use PowerShell as your default command line interface instead of the CMD, you will generate a lot of false positive with this alert. But that's the idea. The goal is to track the abnormal behavior when a parent process is not the regular one. So do not hesitate to have a look at Sysmon because it's a very, very, very powerful tool to detect this kind of malicious activities. That was my last slide. So thank you for your attention. We have a few minutes for questions. So feel free to type your questions and I will do my best to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Xavier, for that awesome presentation. We do have a few questions in the window, so I'm just going to run through these now quickly. So question number one, this was from towards the beginning of the presentation. Can you explain some more why 2 stages are needed? Is there a reason why this can't all be done at stage 1?
Usually an attack relies on 2 stages. Why? Because to be able to infect the computer, you must use an exploit. So you must abuse a vulnerability present in a software, in the operating system, and so on. And this this vulnerability will help you to take the control of the computer, for example, to get system privileges, and then the second stage will be used to really deploy the malware as system privileges. So the first step is to really break the security of the computer using a known vulnerability, using a 0-day, using UAC bypass and stuff like this. And the second stage will be really the installation of the malware, and the malware will do its job. It could be a remote access tool, it could be a ransomware, it could be a data stealer and stuff like this. So first you need to compromise to be able to take the control of the environment. That's stage 1. Stage 2, you deploy your malicious tools to do your malicious job, between quotes.
Great, thank you. Second question, you mentioned obfuscation of the MD5s. What other obfuscation techniques are you seeing specifically to bypass firewalls or to confuse antiviruses?
Obfuscation techniques, the goal of the obfuscation technique is not to bypass the automatic analysis, so sandboxing, because a sandbox will just execute the code. So if the code is very simple or the code is very complex, for the live analyzing system, it will be exactly the same. The code will run and will execute. The goal of the obfuscation is first to make the life of the secret analyst much more difficult. And trust me, sometimes it's very difficult. But it will also try to bypass very simple security controls, like regular expressions, like Yara holes. For example, if I go, I will try to find an example. Some code. Yeah, let's try to have a look at this one. For example, if you write a Yara rule which will contain just a dump example, you write a Yara rule to detect get decompressed byte array. If you just do get plus decompress plus byte plus array, basically your Yara rules will not match. So the goal of the obfuscation is really to make simple controls not efficient. Just have a look at the title of my slide. So basically, this is a very simple obfuscation technique. So we use ob, then we use fusk, then we use CHR65, which is the letter A, and also obfuscation. Because this is for a computer, this is of the normal world, it's not a big issue. If you write Yara rules or regular expression, and for example, you take care of the case, in this case, we have a match of uppercase and lowercase, so you will bypass, I would say, dumb security controls. That's why the people, they try to obfuscate as much as possible. The classic also command that is obfuscated is the eval command. In JavaScript, you have eval. So when you have, I like to say, when you see eval in a script, it's evil. Eval is evil. So they try to replace eval by something else to make the life of the security analyst more difficult. It was exactly the same example using the G. Where is it? When I explain this, the G. Yes, in this case. So you see on this slide that they use $T0, they place the string dex, and then they replace the D by I, so which is IX, because IX is also a well-known, is some kind of eval in PowerShell. So the goal is to try to avoid using directly IX. They try to use something else to be sure that people will not spot automatically, oh, there is an IX, there is an eval, so it could potentially be malicious.
Thank you so much for that answer. The next question is, what about the go-to Kali tools?
About the what?
The Kali tools.
Kali, you mean the Linux distribution for pen testing?
I believe so, yes.
I'm sorry, I don't see the point between Kali and my presentation.
Yeah, not to worry. We'll move on to the next question. The JScript shell process should create a process execution log 4688. What is the common process in a Windows environment?
On which slide? Oh, okay, can you repeat the question?
Sorry. The JScript shell process should create a process execution log 4688. Is this a common process in the Windows environment?
I have no idea. I know that by default, you can enable a lot of events and you can see a lot. So the goal of this presentation was not to to try to hide itself in logs. So for example, as I explained, Sysmon will generate a lot of logs and will detect this kind of behavior. So I don't know if this is a very common one, but of course, this technique will generate a very interesting event. It could also be added to my conclusions. To protect yourself, have a look at your logs, because you will have plenty of useful information in your logs. So Sysmon, and of course, keep an eye on your logs, definitively.
Great, thank you. We have a lot of people here thanking you for a very informative session. So thank you so much for everything. There's one final question before we finish today. Since the .NET framework is pretty much everywhere, then you are saying that most of these payloads are written in .NET programming languages, C#, VB.NET, etc. Is that right?
Yes, so C# for the CSC and JScript for the, so they use, if you have a look at the different code, where we try to find an example back in the slides. No, this one, C compile, no, let's try with GSC, for example. So you see, voila, so you see that in the GS file, you see you have, basically, they use the .NET API. When you have virtualalog system.convert.from base64, it's based on the .NET, of course, yeah, but it's very popular. So it's so easy to write code and to write, hélas, malicious code.
Sure. Great. Well, that comes to the that's the end of all of our questions now. So thank you so much again, Xavier, for your awesome presentation today, and
my pleasure.
Bringing this content to the SANS community. Thank you. To our audience, we greatly appreciate you listening in. For a schedule of all the upcoming and archived SANS webcasts, including this one, please visit sans.org/webcasts. Until next time, take care, and we hope to have you back again soon for the next SANS webcast.